The Falcon 9 rocket is an integral part of today's space ecosystem. It's like the Swiss Army knife of space travel, handling everything from national security missions and rideshare flights to science and Earth observation missions. SpaceX first launched the Falcon 9 back in 2010, and since then it's become a workhorse for the company. With a whopping total of 354 launches, this rocket has proven its reliability time and time again, without a major issue since 2016, which is pretty impressive. But every streak has its end. On July 11, 2024, during a launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base, a batch of Starlink satellites didn't make it to their intended orbit, marking the end of this incredible run. Everything was set. The countdown, the excitement, and then, bam! Things didn't go as planned. If you're wondering what went wrong and why everyone's talking about this, you're in the right place. We're going to break it all down for you in the simplest and most entertaining way possible. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, let's take a quick breather. You've just stumbled on the Space Minds channel, where we turn the mysteries of space into exciting adventures. If you love rockets, galaxies, and everything in between, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join our crew for a journey through the cosmos. And don't forget to ring the bell, because space waits for no one, and neither do our updates. So here's the scoop on what happened with SpaceX's Falcon 9. On Thursday evening, July 11, 2024, the SpaceX rocket was launched from the Vandenberg Space Force Base in the US state of California. Maybe you were hoping to see another successful mission, but what happened instead was totally unexpected. The rocket, with all its high-tech wizardry, just decided to throw a curveball, and guess what? This mishap led to an immediate halt on all their upcoming launches. Yes, you heard that right, an instant pause on everything. Do you know what's even more surprising? The FAA has grounded SpaceX until investigations are concluded. This could have several impacts on SpaceX's future missions and the whole space industry. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. First things first, let's talk about the rocket itself. SpaceX is known for pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and their rockets are usually top-notch. But today's incident reminds us that even the best can have an off day. The rocket was launching the Starlink Group 9-3 mission out of Vandenberg, California, aiming to place 20 Starlink satellites into orbit. The first stage performed perfectly, successfully lifting the payload into space. The booster, which had been used on previous flights, worked as expected and returned safely. The issue arose with the second stage, which was brand new and hadn't faced such a challenge before. As the second stage was supposed to fire its engine to adjust the orbit, an anomaly occurred. Engineering cameras captured the engine bell turning red hot and ice forming at an unusual rate. This was a clear indication that something was wrong. It appeared that there was a leak of one of the propellants, likely liquid oxygen. As the liquid oxygen expanded and evaporated in the vacuum of space, it left behind solid ice, which started falling off the rocket in significant amounts. Despite these visual clues, the exact cause of the failure is still under investigation. The engine failed to reignite for the second burn, which is crucial for adjusting the orbit of the payload. This meant that the Starlink satellites were left in a lower than planned orbit, making their future uncertain. They either needed to use their onboard thrusters to correct their orbit or risk falling back into the atmosphere and burning up. SpaceX mentioned that they managed to contact 10 of the 20 Starlink satellites. They attempted to use the satellites' thrusters to raise their orbits, but the outcome is still uncertain. To break this down with a simple analogy, it's like when you're trying to ride a bike uphill. The hill is super steep and the wind is blowing hard against you. Even if you pedal really hard, you might not be able to make it to the top because the wind and the steepness are too much to handle. In the case of SpaceX, The satellites were placed in a very low orbit, just 135 kilometers above Earth. This low altitude is like a steep hill where there's a lot of atmospheric drag, similar to the strong wind. The team tried to send commands to the satellites to boost them higher, just like you trying to pedal harder, but the drag was too strong. Each time the satellites passed the lowest point in their orbits, they lost altitude, making it harder to climb back up. So despite their best efforts, the thrust available from the satellite's engines wasn't enough to overcome the drag and raise their orbit. Just like our biker struggling against the wind, the satellites couldn't push through the high drag environment to get to where they needed to go. So, some satellites might succeed in reaching their intended orbits, while others might not. You may be wondering what happens to the satellites after this, and whether there's any harm to public safety. Well, the management at SpaceX has assured us in their statement that the satellites will re-enter Earth's atmosphere and fully demise. They do not pose a threat to other satellites in orbit or to public safety. So what happens after this unexpected failure? First, this incident has suddenly put a halt to the flawless track record of Falcon 9. As many of you know, the Falcon 9 has been SpaceX's workhorse, launching more than 300 missions successfully. The rocket has been a symbol of reliability and innovation, setting SpaceX apart in the space industry. But with this failed mission, the incredible success streak of the world's most frequently used rocket type has come to an end. Notwithstanding the situation, Tom Mueller, the former vice president of propulsion systems at SpaceX and the brains behind the Falcon 9 engines, expressed optimism. He said, "We knew this incredible streak had to end sometime, but 344 consecutive flights are amazing." Mueller also expressed confidence in the SpaceX team's ability to fix the issue and get back on track. In response to this failure, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, stepped in to conduct a thorough investigation. All future SpaceX launches are on hold until the FAA completes its investigation and approves the necessary corrective actions. This is a big deal because SpaceX has some pretty exciting missions lined up, and this recent issue could throw a wrench in the works. First up, there's a commercial spaceflight dubbed Polaris Dawn scheduled for July 31st. This isn't just any trip. It includes plans for the first private spacewalk. But with the current hold on SpaceX launches, there's a big question mark over whether this mission, headed by Jared Isaacman, will go ahead as planned. Then in mid-August, SpaceX has an astronaut flight to the International Space Station for NASA. Again, this project is part of NASA's ongoing efforts to maintain a continuous human presence in space. The astronauts rely on SpaceX to get them there safely, so any delays or cancellations can have a ripple effect on their schedules and the experiments they plan to conduct in space. If these flights are delayed, it's not just a matter of rescheduling. There's a lot of moving parts, from coordinating with the international space agencies to managing the astronauts' training schedules and the science experiments lined up for the ISS. In short, this launch halt is more than just a pause. It's a significant speed bump that could affect some very high-profile and eagerly anticipated missions. But the good news is that there are very high expectations that SpaceX would bounce back from this. Remember, this isn't the first time a Falcon 9 rocket has run into trouble. The last big failure happened in September 2015. It was a pretty dramatic incident where the Falcon 9 exploded during a test at Cape Canaveral. The explosion destroyed both the rocket and an Israeli communications satellite worth nearly $200 million. But SpaceX came back from that setback. This time, we can only hope that they get everything sorted out quickly so these exciting plans can get back on track. So there you have it. The Falcon 9's incredible success streak has been interrupted, but SpaceX is already working on solutions. The space industry is watching closely to see how this unfolds. If you found this update helpful, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Space Minds for all the latest space news and updates.